Feel? No? No energy? No? Okay, before I start, I think I just want to do a quick polling so that I can ask relevant questions. So in this room, how many of you are actually startup founders or work in the startup? Okay. How many of you are in investment firm or VCs and whatnot? No, okay. And then what is everyone else doing here? Okay, cool. Okay, I get a sense now. All right, I'm Eric Tan. I'm part of the investment office in Catcha Group. We meet a lot of companies and we ask a lot of tough questions to founder. And then it's interesting to get a chance to do this on the stage. Fui, before we start, do you want to do a quick intro about yourself and the company? Why did you all do it? And what are the exciting stuff that's happening or that has happened?
Sure. Well, my name is Fui. That's what everyone calls me. I started Kaodim about 4 years ago. Kaodim is basically a local services platform. Things like cleaning, plumbing, moving, pest controls, a lot of things related to your home, although we are, and then recently we have been moving out into a lot of different categories, like beauty, events, training, and so on. From the consumers, we see ourselves as we strive to be the first and last destination for any service need that you may have. And for our service providers, we see ourselves very much as an operating system where you sort of get to plug in and get your marketing done, your tech, your customer service, all of the things that are difficult and basically prevent them from growing their businesses. So that's Kaodim, I think, in a nutshell, as a platform.
So as an average consumer in this audience, right, how can we use your service?
You can go to kaodim.com or you can download the app. That's pretty much it.
Right. So as we all know, there's quite a few players in the market across the region. Obviously, you guys operate in 4 countries right now. Who are the competitors right now out there? What is your competitive edge against them?
Well, it's a question I get a lot, and the way we see competition is that I think the old way of doing things is really the main competitor, right? Getting referrals and so on from your aunt, your mom, your dad. And the way we strive to outdo all of that is really about creating a far better and really different experience. Right, you and I were chatting earlier just now. What is the difference in the experience with Kaodim? Compared to the old way of doing things, our basic and fundamental thesis is that you can get a car, you can get products or whatever on the touch of your phone or over an app, but you can't do that for services. You can't get a cleaner, you can't get a plumber. Not fast, not reliably, not in a better way. So that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to just make it really fast, really easy, and we do that by focusing very much on the service provider. I think no matter how fancy of an app you have, let's face it, 90% of your experience with a plumber is the plumber himself, right? So, how we distinguish ourselves is to build a platform that really empowers these service providers by helping them get better at things like what I was mentioning, right? The customer service aspects, the professionalization, the dispute resolution, the billings, the technology, over and above getting them jobs, so that when they get better, then they can provide a far better experience to customers.
So do you guys actually build tools to get them onboarded, and what kind of tools are there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, apart from the basic kind of tools, which, is the verification process to make sure that they pass the test, and then you have your reviews and all of those things that are, I think, quite common and nothing new there. Some of the newer tools that we provide are basically a one-stop management sort of a system for all of their jobs. They can do their scheduling, pick up new jobs. They can buy all of the credits and everything that allows them to participate on the platform, all via their app. So, I mentioned operating system earlier, and that's what we are, I think, right? As a vendor in a particular category, you can basically sign up, do the verification process, and plug into that operating system, and you get all of those things done for you. And you, as a plumber or cleaner or whatever, you get to focus on what you do best, which is the plumbing work.
Got it. By the way, if you guys have any questions, please go into our Slido and submit any tough questions that I might have missed out. So feel free to do that. We're going to flash the question up there. So another question that I have is that online marketplaces, as we know, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? There's always the buyer, the seller. How do you guys balance that, and how does the dynamics work for you guys?
I think, a great question and a continuing one. I think for us, it's the big realization, and even though, if you take a step back, it might seem like an obvious one, is that you really have to focus on the supply side. I think, the big difference with Southeast Asia versus, let's say, more developed markets like in the United States or Australia or whatever, older models, sort of like the lead generation, or I think there are a few noteworthy companies like Thumbtacks, Angie's List, all of those companies where they focus mostly on the discovery and just helping you get matched to a service provider. That, I think, is sufficient in markets like this because the service quality there is generally just a lot better. In Southeast Asia, the guys that we have, you call them professionals. That may be true. They're really good at the plumbing or the cleaning, but there are a lot of things that they're not good at, right? So those are the things that I think you need to focus on in order for this business to be successful.
Great. So in that case, you mentioned lead generation as one model. What is your business model right now?
Sure. It's a transactional one, where, for every transaction that passes through the platform, we take a 10, 20, 30, whatever percentage cut from each of those transactions.
And how do you decide how many percent for what categories? Like,
Right.
Can you give some example?
Yeah, a lot of, data there where we had to do research.
Whatever you can share, lah.
Sure. Basically, it really depends on the category, right? We need to study the average order values, the margins that these service providers have. The point, I think, really is to monetize in such a way that it is not just sustainable, but also maintains a healthy enough margin for the service provider such that he sees value and will continue to remain sticky on your platform.
Yeah. Another challenge that we meet a lot of company when it comes to marketplaces is about the leakages of the platform. That means me as a consumer going to a platform looking for a supply of services, for example, a taxi on Grab. Over time, I will still use it because it's a high-frequency product and there's many more reasons. But in your case, I may be using plumbing once or twice or 3 times a year. So do you guys face any problem of people kind of leaking out of a platform and go directly to the suppliers? And how do you guys deal with that?
Yep. So, it's a common question and a very valid one. I think it is actually perhaps the reason why some of those other companies, like Thumbtack, for example, have just said, okay, you know what, since I can't control the whole transaction and I can't capture it on my platform, I won't even try. I'll just do lead generation. I'll help you find a plumber and leave it at that. We don't think that that's the best experience for the customer, and we don't think that that's the way to build a meaningful business. So I think to answer that question, it really goes down to value. What we strive to do is to create or make it better for you to transact on the platform rather than off. So take, for example, a consumer, right? You can find a plumber or a cleaner, and he's gone through the vetting process. We make sure that he's a couple of touches better than the regular guy out there. Over and above that, we give things like free insurance, guarantees, warranties, all of the things that we consider are things that the service provider cannot give to you on their own. We give that for free, so that, and by the way, you only get those things if you book through the platform.
Gotcha.
And on the service provider side, we give them all of those things I mentioned, right? Like the customer service, the tech, and everything that's available to them if they maintain and book the transactions through the platform. So that's how we manage that.
Right. Okay. So we have one interesting question. As we talk about Southeast Asia, we say, hey, like if you want to be a unicorn, you got to scale to multiple countries, or you start your business in Indonesia. And we have one question about scaling the company, and what are the key positions that you need to kind of fill up. So maybe you can share some of your current strategy right now in terms of scaling across the region. What are your best market, your worst market, and what are you going to do to kind of be the number one player?
Okay, it's like a super loaded question. Well, I think, first and foremost, it's really about getting a very clear and articulated vision on how the model is. And then, some of the stuff that you guys have probably heard a lot about already, which is making sure you're very localized and all of that. I think the main thing for me, though, is whenever you think about regional expansion, it's prioritization. No matter how much you raise, resources are always limited. So it's a question of where do you need to go, why, and which one first, and how much money you put into that, right? And then the second thing is hiring, right? The only way I feel, and from what I've personally learned, the only way that you can get around this question of localization and growing in a different market is to get very, very strong people, not necessarily locals, although I have a preference for that, to lead the business there. So, more specifically, which people do you need to hire for? Not necessarily the answer, but the way we did it was we got people from the regional teams, right? Have a strong regional team, maybe come up with like a head of expansion. You hire for somebody like that who knows the business model, what makes it work, what makes, what doesn't. And then he sort of goes into the country and then hires a country head, some operational guys, and then some marketing, right? Start there. And then everything else sort of follows.
Fair. So at this stage of your company, like I can see there's a phase where you're moving from a startup to almost like a scale up to have more processes in place to make sure things are moving well. Are you a first-time founder?
Yeah.
First-time founder, first-time CEO. Are there any challenges that you face? And what did you wish that you actually know before you actually started?
Are there any challenges? Oh, yeah. How many? Longer than this.
Like if you can if you can speak to the 5 year ago Fui, what would you tell the Fui 5 years ago?
So I think the business related one, any founder, investor, or anybody who even working and sort of studying what starting a company is like. I think there are plenty of examples. The one that perhaps people don't talk about so much, and I guess I would highlight, is the personal stuff. There really is a whole lot of truth, and it is very important to know exactly what it is you want out of what you're doing, because it's really hard. The journey is really, really tough. There's a lot of ups and downs, and if you don't have a clear, articulated goal for yourself, what I think would happen is you can veer off course quite easily. Raising venture money, for example, right? A lot of people say, yeah, that's a good goal so that you can grow from 1 to 10. But why is growing from 1 to 10 or 10 to 100 necessarily a good thing? Is that what you want? Is that what you think the business should do? So if I look back 5 years, I would ask myself those questions a lot more. I might end up with the same answers, but I would ask them a lot more.
Right. Wise word from a solid founder, yeah. I guess there's a last question to kind of round it off, which is the future of Kaodim. Where do you see the business in 10 years? How do you make it defensible? And what's next?
Yeah. So I think going back to that original thesis is that I think people will consume services in a completely different way, and it's going to have something to do with your phone. The experience is all going to be loaded up faster, better, cheaper. Whether we are the ones to do it, I don't know. But I think what we have planned is to, go deeper in the markets that we're in, open up more categories, and really just keep striving to create a better experience each and every time. That's really our goal. We want to create a great product.
All right, perfect. Our time is up. Fui is going to be around after this. Grab him if you have any more tough questions that you haven't asked. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.